And put your
Sorry.
questions in the chat uh, as we go along. This should be as interactive as we can make it on a Zoom webinar. Uh, I will start my slideshow and start sharing now. Hold on. And there we go. So I'm going to talk about a simple guidelines, but before we actually talk about how you should present, let's talk about the psychology and how people think. So, uh, most of us believe that when we're talking to humans, we're talking to rational, thinking, logical human beings. And we are. But there's an ancient part of our brain that is actually the decision maker. And that's the same part of the brain that we share with reptiles, alligators. It's called the reptilian brain. That's where decisions are made. And when we talk to the cerebral, the cerebellum, the human part of the brain, in abstractions and large words, we're counting on it to translate those words to an engine, a decision engine, a yes, no, black and white decision engine that doesn't understand language, doesn't understand abstractions, and uh, is very visual. It's important for us to understand that. I'm going to give you a illustration of how illogical we humans are. I'm going to give you 6 scenarios. I'll walk you through them. And as we walk through them, I want you to think about what your answer is. Matter of fact, um, what I'd like you to do is put into the chat yes or no on the questions we ask. I'll ask. So, if I offered you $5 because I needed a dollar bill, yes or no, would you take that offer? I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, Y's good. Okay. Oh, there's somebody who doesn't want to make $4. But okay. So now let's take the same math. And now we're going to apply this math to another problem called the trolley problem. There are 5 people sitting on a track and a trolley's coming. That trolley is going to have bad results. There'll be bad results. People are going to die if it keeps going. You happen to be sitting at a switch, and that switch, if you flip it, will put the trolley on a separate track. Unfortunately, there's somebody else tied to that track. We lose one person, but we save 5. How many people would make the switch to save that person? Yes, no. Okay, next scenario. Same 5 people, same trolley, but this time you're on a bridge. And you're on a bridge with a person who's large enough that if you push them off that bridge, that trolley will stop. You'll save 5 people, but the person you pushed will perish. How many people push that person off the bridge? I will tell you that when I do this in groups and over time, studies show that somewhere between 70, 80% of the people will flip the switch. 20% of the people will push the person. Now I'm going to give you a really difficult scenario. There are 5 people, all of them needing an organ transplant or they will die. There's one healthy person in the room who has every organ that those people need. What I'm looking for here is only a yes. How many people will strap that person down so that we can harvest their organs to save 4 people? Oof is a great answer. All right. Ian, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've met one person who said he'd do it, and he was uh, an Army Ranger, Spec Ops with PTSD. Um, but if we look at the math is the same for all these scenarios. It's give up 1, save 5, net gain of 4. What's going on that allows us to push the switch, which 80% of the people do, versus push the person that only 20% of the people will do? And I will posit that what's going on is there's a part of our brain that's not logical. That part of the brain is the reason we're alive today. Can anybody guess what you'd call a species that has 1 or 2 babies a year that was willing to kill itself, that was willing to kill its kind, that was willing to cannibalize or murder its own on a regular basis? That species is what you'd call uh, extinct. That's that's extinction. One of our survival things that's hardwired into us is we are hardwired not to kill our own. So what's the difference between the switch and pushing the person off the bridge? The switch is an abstraction, and the part of our brain that makes decisions doesn't connect to murder. But when we push somebody off the bridge, that's not an abstraction. That's murder. And our instinct says we don't murder our own. This is just to illustrate that when we're presenting, we need to understand not the logical part of our brains, but how the illogical part of our brain works. So here's somebody giving a pitch. And if you look at the audience, people are nodding off, sleeping, yawning. The first thing we need to do when we're pitching is wake these people up and make them understand why this is important to them. The next thing we need to do is not bore the heck out of them and keep them interested. And one way we do that is to hurt them. So I'm going to give you a 3-chapter way of pitching. And the first one I call hurt rescue. If you look at psychology, people are more risk averse. They will run away from risk much harder with more force than they run towards gain. That's why we always talk about pain. What's the pain you solve? So we're going to do a hurt versus a rescue pitch. And that's our first chapter. So raising capital is a 3-chapter story. The first one is we want to wake them up and tell them why they should be interested in this. The second chapter, when I was an angel investor and I went into listen to a pitch, the main thing I was listening for was risk. When I went and listened to a pitch, I was predisposed to say, I am not investing. Every time I'm looking for a reason not to invest because investing my money was risky. So every signal you give that tells me risk makes me walk away. So your first job is to wake them up. The second job is to reduce the risk. That's chapter 2. And the third job is to appeal to greed. What's in it for me? Because every human being is tuned into the radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's our what we are always there, whether we can be the nicest person in the world, but even when we're nice, even when we're doing charitable work, we're doing it because it makes us feel good. There's something in it for us. So let's talk about that first chapter. Let's pretend I invented aspirin and there's nothing like it in the world. So with the way I would pitch to wake people up in chapter one would be to engage a part of the brain that causes a visual. And I would ask the question, imagine you are. Because if I said today to folks, even if I said, don't think about a pink elephant, how many people didn't see in their mind a pink elephant? We need to create visuals in the mind. And when we say imagine you are, it creates a visual. So we want to put the investor in the seat of pain. We want to take them to who our best possible client and user is and have them understand the problem. We want them to understand why a customer would reach into their wallet, take out money, and hand it over to you. So imagine you're a working mom and you get constant migraines so bad you can't go to work, you can't take care of your children, and you get them 2 to 3 times a month. Now I've put them in the seat of pain. What if just one little pill, two actually in the case of aspirin, within 15 minutes and over 90% efficacy, we could cure that pain so that this mother could go to work, get her kids to school, keep things organized. Would they pay $1 for that? So the first thing is what if, that's the hurt. The second thing is what's the rescue? If they use this thing, this is how good it would be. And the third thing is, well, there are X amount of people who get these kinds of headaches on a monthly basis, which means our total addressable market is X. So hurt, what's the pain? Rescue, how do they gain? And the third, this is big enough that it's worth this person not going to sleep, not looking at their watch, not yawning, but to stay, pay attention. That's chapter one. Those 3 slides are chapter one. Then there's chapter two. What they think now is, hey, curing headaches is a real problem. People have these headaches and they have headaches and they're debilitating and they are willing to pay money to alleviate that. And there's enough of them. That's great. But there are tons and tons of stories of people who have great products that satisfy a great need that have failed. So why do I trust you, your team, as an investor? I'm asking, somebody probably will solve this. I may want to invest in something like this, but why should I trust your team to execute on this plan? So that's the goal of chapter two. We want to let them know how unique the way we deliver this is. We want to have a good grasp on the competitive landscape. Most importantly, we want to say, this is how we go to market. This is how we take it to market. So even today, TiVo is the best DVR system out there. It's got more features, it does more things, but I bet you none of you have a TiVo. All of you are using something with a better go-to-market plan. All of you are using your cable provider's DVR, your YouTube, you're using YouTube TV or something else to record shows so that you can watch them later. Not because they're better, but because they got to market better. You want to show them that you have a full grasp of your unit economics. So, what's your cost of acquisition? What's your lifetime value? What's your cost of goods? And in today's environment, VCs don't like to invest. They're not really risk capital. Angels will do some risk capital. VCs won't. VCs have moved into growth capital. So what that means, when I raised my first round of money in 1986, you needed $6 million to start a company. And the reason you needed $6 million to start a company was there was no ubiquitous internet. So therefore, everybody who worked on our product had to be in the same room. There was no open source software. So every line of code we wrote had to be written from scratch. We didn't have building blocks. There were 8 different computers dominant in the market with 8 different operating systems. So we had to port our software to 8 different versions of computers. So it was expensive. And by the mere act of receiving $6 million, we would be one of 5 companies that would be competing in the market. Therefore, VCs picked winners by just saying, here's your money, build it. And in 86, I was with Progress Software. And actually in 86, we had gone public already. No, I'm sorry. In 86, we raised our money. In 91, we went public for $360 million. We were competing against 5 other companies. There was one company that was 10 times more successful than us. I think they had a lesser product, but they had better go to market. And that was Oracle, which is still, Oracle and Progress are still around today. They're both on the public markets today. Oracle's 50 times more valuable in terms of their capital than Progress. But we still, when we went public back in 1991, went public for $360 million, which in 91 money is pretty good. You could buy a nice car for $360 million. The next thing is the team. And this is where a lot of startups have problems and hide because many people haven't done what you're trying to do before. And so it's really important, though, to instill who the team is, what your backup is, and how you will go to market, the kind of experience, and why is it that this person can execute on their portion of the business plan successfully. Lastly is chapter 3, which is appeal to their greed. So now you want to show a financial plan, a full financial plan that you can back up. Now, I left this out on when we were talking about COGS, unit economics. The reason investors are looking for some kind of traction now is because when you tell me your cost of acquisition is X and your lifetime value is Y, the more theoretical that is, the less it's backed up with experience and real data, the more risk I'm taking as a investor. And humans are all afraid of risk. What's in it for the person who decides to invest in your company if they're in a VC firm? They become partner if they have a couple winners. They become unemployed if all they have are losers. So when they're looking at you, one of the things they're saying to themselves is, does this person get me promoted or fired? Because you're usually, when you're first starting, you're talking to an associate. When you're talking to an angel investor, I always thought, it's my money. Could I use it better? Would I rather have a car, a Ferrari, or a piece of your business? Do I want to face my wife and say, "Hun, I lost $100,000 today"? Or do I want to say, "Hey, babe, would you like to have a new diamond ring or a new diamond necklace?" So besides a full financial plan, you want to give them comparable exits. By comparable exits, what companies like yours are have had exits and what were the size of the exits? You need to show me that I'm going to get 10x. Uh, when I invest X amount of dollars, I need to get 10x back. So the next thing I want to talk about is what's really important when you're presenting. So sure, the words are important, but back to the part of our brain that doesn't understand words. The style and format of your presentation is just as, if not more important than your business plan. Now, I'll back that up. Let's back that up. When you're first pitching, you're like on Tinder. And all you want to do is get the VC to swipe right, not swipe left. So to get them to swipe right, you need to have an attractive pitch. You need to be an attractive pitcher. Um, the business plan, though, but faking it till you make it doesn't work. It works in the pitch. Where it falls apart is during due diligence. So I'm not saying fake it, but I am saying that all of the background stuff, all of the details, all of the hard work you've done doesn't count as much as the appearance and the way you present for the pitch. All the other real stuff, the nuts and bolts, they count during due diligence. And if you can't stand up to that, there's no sense pitching. It's like the person who puts a 15-year-old picture on their Tinder, and when you meet them, you walk away. So you want to present numbers, and you don't want to present it as numbers, because remember, the part of the brain that makes the decision doesn't understand those numbers. You're counting on the cerebellum to make the translation. I'm old. I don't know if you guys have played this before, but when I was young, we used to play a thing called telephone. There'd be 10 people in a row. You'd give a message to one, they'd whisper it in the ear of the next, and by the time it got to the 10th person, the message was distorted. When you present to the cerebellum and don't present something visual to the part of the brain that makes a decision, you're playing telephone tag. You're hoping that the translation is clear when it gets to the part of the brain that makes a decision. So that's why you want to take it and present it in a graph. You don't want to do numbers. You want clean slides. You don't want your audience reading the slides. You want them looking at you. You want it to, the few messages you want to give in bullets. You want them to pay attention. And if you just have all the words, if you tell the whole story, there's no reason for you to be up there. You might as well just send it in an email, which would have no impact. The reason they say a picture tells a thousand words is because the part of the brain that makes decisions is visual. You want to keep your slides simple. Keep it around 10 slides. Don't spend more than 20 minutes. Um, Keep the fonts large, no more than 7 words per font, and no more than 5 bullets. And I don't understand why, but even number bullets. Don't do 2, don't do 4, do 3 or 5. So Albert Morabian, uh, PhD, smart fellow, has come up with what he calls the impact factor. And that is, studies show that the words you use are only 7%, have 7% of the impact. Your vocal tone, how you speak, has 38% impact. And your body language, the confidence you have, has the most amount of impact. So confidence, I would say, is not just how you stand, how you hold yourself, and how you talk, but it's also in the quality of your slides, the quality of your visuals, and how you put it together. And that is a an indication of how well you can lead. The slides and the logical progression of the slides tells the audience how organized you are and the quality of your strategic thinking. So um, I think all of us can think of a politician who, if we just had his words or her words, I don't want to, her or his words written down, we'd say that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But there's a politician who's risen to the top of politics based on vocal tone and body language. So when you're asking yourself, how could that be? It's because of the way our brains work. Illogical. So in summary, don't present a group of slides. You want to put them and organize them as if it's a story, and it's a 3-chapter story. You want to keep what you do visual. Keep it simple. You don't want people reading slides. You want them looking at you. And you want them to get the impact of the slide just based on the visual as soon as it's up. You don't want to get married with this person while you're pitching them. All you want is a second date, and your presence counts. So uh, let's uh, let's go and look at this and say, is there anybody who would like to figure out how to stop sharing? All right. So now I'm looking at the chat. What I'd like to do now is take take somebody's product story and turn it into the first 3 chapters. So, does anybody want to put in there and tell me, what does your product do? I'm looking, I see the last, I don't see, come on, tell me. Ah, okay. So
Do you want me to?
Nepenthe Health and Wealth Cooperative, recruit for clinical trials. Okay. Um,
Glenn, do you want me to allow Stephen to come off mute and talk about this, or do you want him just to use
yeah,
the
that'd be
chat?
great. That would be great.
Let's see, Stephen Thomas. Uh,
I don't know if you hear this. Unfortunately, I got tree people taking down trees in my yard.
no, it sounds quiet as a church.
Okay,
Stephen
good.
Thomas, looks like
That's
you're signed in a couple places, but you should be able to come off mute if you want to share. I've got Stephen Thomas here with us.
all right, Stephen, tell me. So I think I see this. So you recruit for clinical trials. So I would assume your end user is the a pharmaceutical company. Yes, Stephen? All right, I see 2 Stevens. Th-
Now I'm unmuted.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay,
So,
perfect. Yes,
pharma,
the customer is a big pharma or a hospital system.
okay.
Um,
What is the big problem they have? Why do they have a problem recruiting for trials?
Absolutely. They have a big problem recruiting for trials that incorporate all of us. So there are pockets of populations who are historically underrepresented in clinical research, and that results in products that don't meet the needs of, for example, women and cardiovascular disease, because all that research was done on men, African Americans, and unique aspects. So we are in that space to bring the people who have historically been left out into the clinical research enterprise in a trusted network because we recruit through barbershops and beauty salons, places
Okay.
where people already have trust.
All right, Stephen, I got it. So, imagine you just invested hundreds of millions of dollars in your product, in your therapeutic. You've tested it, you feel really good about it, but imagine after all the testing, all the years, and all the hundreds of millions of dollars, it gets to market and it fails. It is not, doesn't have the efficacy you promised. What if, and why is that? Because where are you recruiting? You don't have access to the full spectrum of socioeconomic population, the socioeconomic population. What if you could, what if you could easily recruit and go after that dynamic so that when you make the investment and present to the FDA, you can present a wide diversity of socioeconomic, gender, race-based results. This could, so the third slide would be how many of these great solutions fail when they get to market, don't prove themselves when they get to market. So it'd be something like that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I would make one little caveat as you're
Okay.
thinking about this scenario. You're thinking about like a medication or a procedure. And what we do that's different is that we are focused on trust. Not as an idea, not as a feeling, but as infrastructure. So we're agnostic on the pill. We're agnostic on the tool. We have companies that are trying to bring a tool, let's say for cardiovascular disease, to the market. Who's dying from cardiovascular disease? Their research clinical trial that they submitted to the FDA does not include the very people who are actually dying from cardiovascular disease. We have access to that group. For whatever reason, these traditional clinical contract research organizations that dominate the market don't have access. So we want to present a new way of engaging populations historically distrustful, but because of our Nepenthe Health and Wealth Cooperative, they've agreed to share their data as part of research.
So I could see that there's a way to finesse and add the nuance that you just described into the pitch. Uh, and that is the fact that while the intentions of the pharmaceutical company are good in terms of they'd like to include a wide diversity population, a wide diverse population,
Yes.
there's a lack of trust.
Yes.
Lack of trust because certain demographics don't trust large pharma.
Correct.
So what if you had a trusted partner?
There you go. And
Okay.
we are that trusted partner. We're that link for an AstraZeneca or Novartis with a product to say we have a network of underrepresented populations you haven't been able to get to that trust us, that have shared their data with us, and that have completed an initial informed consent that they will like to have additional information about participating in a clinical trial. And we've picked your trial as one we'll sponsor and support in our network of over 1,000 barbers and stylists across the United States who have been trained to turn their shops into trusted information portals for access
Okay.
to clinical trials.
Okay. So two things. One is that I would separate that into two parts. So the
Okay.
first part is the trust. That's the important part. That's the sort of what makes you different. That's the rescue part. We
Yes.
a network of trust that can recruit in these people who don't trust you.
Yes.
Numbers go back in the why do I trust your company to make money for me? Because we
Okay.
have 1,000 of we
Yeah.
have network. That's in the prove to me that you're the right team to make. I know somebody needs to solve this problem. Prove to me that it's your team that I should bet on for solving it.
Okay. Okay. We got 30 years of figuring this out, and only now saying we're not charity anymore. We're not public health charity. We're moving into the private sector space, but as a different business model,
See, Stephen, I'm going to cut
a
you off in
cooperative.
minutes, and I want to leave it open for questions. But
Okay.
have we talked before?
I don't think so, but I think we got a little thing going in that part of the brain that works.
Okay, good. By the way, I want to put in one pitch. So, Josh talked about how I am faculty at Maryland teaching the I-Core program. The
Yes.
I-Core program is open to any University of Maryland alumni student or people in in Maryland who want to learn how to do customer discovery. And
Yes.
when you do good quality data-based customer discovery, all of a sudden, one of the proof points you need to present to investors, the fact that you've used a scientific method to test the need,
Yes.
did it as a National Science Foundation, University of Maryland researcher, because we're
Yes.
funded by National Science Foundation, you have a lot of credibility. So next question, any questions? Anybody in the, so that's a great question. So, or another way of saying what is it, the brand is a want angle, not a need angle, or what is it, is it aspirin or is it a vitamin? Um, so let's say a want item is um, let's look at history. The iPhone. People buy iPhones. They can get a cheap Android phone for half the price. Why do they buy an iPhone? Because they do have a need. The need is, I want to say something about myself. I want to stand out from the crowd. So, um, yeah. So a luxury jewelry brand. I want to, I don't know how I would pitch that story, but there is a need. But it is to pitch it as a need. So when these people show up, how they show up tells other people about themselves. Should they be taken seriously? Are they a person of value, of worth? And that's what my product helps do. It gives a message. It makes them more acceptable into society, more. So you need to translate it into a need, and I can't think of many wants that you can't make into a need. Um, I want a Ferrari. I can't afford one, but I want one. I don't need one, but I will tell you, if I had the money to spend on it, I would spend on it because of the fun it gives me, because the amount of fun, and for the message it says when I drive up. Other questions? So you're welcome to send me an email if you want more information. It's GHELLMAN @umd.edu. So it's my last name. Our tag is health. Any other questions? All right. If you enjoyed this, I appreciate it. Um, I'll give another plug. I've gotten 8 books up on Amazon. One's on leadership. Gets very much into the uh, the the way people think, the mind, the human mind. And it's called Intentional Leadership. And I've got the rest are all thriller books, novels, fiction. So you can check out my books. You can send me emails. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I'm going to pass it off to Josh.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. There is one question in the chat, Glenn, if you want to share your email, if you wanted to type that into the chat, if you're comfortable doing that. But just really wanted to thank you and appreciate your time. You did a great job pitching it, but I would really recommend for anyone here, if you do have a business that you're working on, or even if it's just still kind of the idea stage of a business, the iCore program that Glenn is part of here at the University of Maryland is really one of the best structured opportunities to get out and talk with customers and learn about how your business, what it means for them, what type of wants they have, what type of needs they have, and then that helps you to tell the story. And I really appreciate, Glenn talking about those next steps of once you get all that data from the customers and hear what they want, how to go around and pitch that so you can get some money to make it happen. But appreciate everybody for being here today. Appreciate those who came off mute, shared their questions, able to do a little bit of live pitching. And most of all, Glenn, appreciate your time and your contributions. But thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thursday, I guess. I'm a day behind. Have a good Thursday, everyone.
All
See ya.
right. Thank you.